The time has come to get all this cleaned up. So we're waiting on some parts. They haven't come in yet. It shouldn't be long. The next couple of days we'll be getting them in, but we're kind of holding off until we get that stuff going. Potak's over there somewhere. He's cutting down the radiator, all the little brackets and stuff on the factory radiator from the 18 truck that we're not going to need. He's just sawing all that stuff off to make more room for fitment. We'll show you that here in a minute after we finish up washing this, but we're going to go ahead and remove this stuff right here. So this bar that holds the spare tire and all that stuff, that's all going to go, and this helps hold the tire too. So we're going to take all that stuff off. We don't plan on having a spare tire under it, so it'll clean it all up a little bit, and then we'll get it over to the pressure washer and get all this clean. So finished up taking off all the spare tire stuff. You can see here, we're going stage 10 weight reduction on this thing. So we need to get all this weight out we can. We'll get rid of this, of course. We're getting rid of the leaf springs and all that stuff. All this bracketry will come off. So it's gonna get a lot lighter back here. But first, I need to take it out and clean it up. Got her out and ready. We're gonna use the Hotsy here. This bad boy is electric and diesel. It heats up the water all crazy. So should help us get some of this dust and old grime off. I'm mostly worried about the cab. That looks pretty on there pretty good. So we're gonna get it all off, get it cleaned up, and get it back in the shop. All cleaned up. Look at that, it looks like a new tank almost. All this hose cleaned up nicely. Man, it's looking good under here now. I mean, yeah, it's a little surface rusty, no big deal. Maybe we'll throw some paint on if we have time, but we're coming down to the limit, so we may just leave it like this and put it all back together. So glad to see it's cleaned up. Now I guess we'll put it back in the shop, let it cool down from this heat. I probably didn't even need the hot water on the pressure washer because it probably would have hit 250 degrees before it even hit the truck, just going through this air out here. It is hot. Fast forward to the next day, and we're at the fuel pump now. Cleaned up. You know, it's rusty, but looking pretty good.
It's like brand new. Look at this.
The fuel tank looks good. Yeah, look at this wiring.
You can see the purple and the gray and the black now. It used to be brown.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So what are we gonna do today, Koja?
I already drained the fuel, so I just ran 12 volts to the fuel pump and just drained it. We had like 12 gallons in it. I was surprised it had that much after somebody dumped out 5 gallons on the floor. So we're gonna take out the fuel pump. I haven't done anything yet here. I don't know which fuel pump we're putting. We have a choice of the Racetronics drop-in that we put in. It's kind of like a universal pump, 255, or we could do the Aeromotive 340. So I'm gonna take it apart and see what kind of fits best. So the good thing is I don't think we have to upgrade the wiring. The wiring is decent. So I mean, we'll just run it how it is. We may have to upgrade this ground wire, but that's easy enough to do.
Scrape off some of the rust under there.
Yeah, a little bit of rust. You know, we haven't seen any of that northeastern rust from that rust belt.
Yeah, this is barely anything.
We've been told that many times.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's actually the fuel pump ground. Then these other wires, the gray one's the fuel pump, and I believe the purple and the black with the white tracer is the fuel sending unit. And I actually powered it up yesterday, and the fuel sending unit still worked. So I guess we did okay on the wiring thus far.
Perfect.
This guy. I believe this is the VAP line. It's easy enough. We'll just take the filler off too while we're here. It's amazing how good that pressure washer works.
Yeah, I know, it cleaned it up. This hose I got really good. I mean, this thing was, you can kind of see right here, it's still kind of dirty, but most of it got cleaned up.
It'd be awesome if like everybody that ever needed a fuel filter or fuel pump replacement pressure wash their vehicle with that set up first.
So much nicer to work up here with no dirt and grime. How are we looking?
I don't see anything yet. That's gonna look normal. So we'll take loose those guys, and I believe that's a 19 and a 16 millimeter, but 3/4 and 5/8 works just fine. So I've done a few of those. I didn't have to go and try it first. They make a special tool for this to get this lock ring off, but you just want to make sure to use a brass punch on it so it doesn't have any sparks. Most people don't have the tool unless you work at like a dealership or somehow just decided to buy one on a whim. So, easiest way, it's just like a bolt. Super easy. It has 3 little tabs on it, and then it's loose.
Perfect.
And there's an O-ring under here too. If that O-ring is messed up, we'll just get one from the dealership. Dang, that's super clean. So the sending unit is this guy right here. So we want to make sure to be careful not to damage it. It's kind of a pain. It has to be done in a certain order.
That fuel filter looks a little clean to not have been replaced recently, huh?
I think it's probably been replaced at some point in its life. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, it does have these little crimp connectors on it. Everything's actually really clean. What I want to do is we'll grab maybe the Racetronics pump and
Yeah, we can
Air
show them
motive.
both at least.
Yeah, and we'll just kind of guess. The Air Motive, I believe, is, they call it like an E85 pump, and that's why it has like the 340 LPH.
Yep, so we'll head to the warehouse. Those are 2 pumps we keep in stock, so we'll go take a look and grab a couple.
I'm gonna just bring this one with us. I'll smell like fuel, but oh well. I'll have to wash my hands like 30 times today.
Russell?
What's up? Where's the Grom at? This is a perfect time.
It's in my office.
We could just take the Grom around to the warehouse. We could take a little bit of a shortcut. Or we could steal Dave's bicycle. That was nice of Lonnie.
Thanks, Lonnie. Down one of these aisles, huh?
Yeah, I came out here earlier to see what we had. And we had like 10 of each, so I'm like, we have enough fuel pumps here for whatever we're doing. Sometimes if we got down to like 1 or 2, it might be a customer's order, so I didn't want to grab one if it was like for a customer. Of course, they're a little bit more important than what our stuff is for. And you have a knife on you?
No.
All my stuff's in my toolbox.
Come on, both of us from Roswell, New Mexico, and neither of us has a knife on us.
Well, there's so little crime here. I keep forgetting to bring
laid
my
our knives down.
We've laid our weapons down. Air Motive. This is a 340. So I'm thinking this should have everything we need in it. Take a look before we go all the way to the back. Okay, so it's got the filter. It's got like a little sleeve. It's got the wiring. It's got the fuel hose.
So that's mainly why we decided to switch over to the Air Motive pump, because it just comes. We have what we carry is the full kit with the fuel filter and the wiring and everything. So this will make it a lot easier on us.
Everything all in one. We won't have to order anything in.
Or try and piece together something.
Yeah, with the 255 we just didn't have, it's like a replacement pump to like if you already have one. So it didn't have any of the components necessary to put it in a fresh install. So rather than going and sourcing all that stuff, it's easier just to buy this kit that has everything that we need all in one. Easy enough. I guess we'll mock up. Make sure you take this little clear cap off. I wonder why it's clear.
Yeah, I know that's
That would be hard to diagnose later. So I'm just putting it on this side just to measure this, because this is like double the length of what we need. So I'm going to put it in the bottom part of our little fuel sending unit. Line this up to about here, and then we'll cut it. Maybe just to cut it just to like a 1/4 inch long than what it needs to be. Think about taking this to my toolbox too. Let's do that. It'd be funny if I lined up the red to the black by accident.
I know. That's what I was thinking.
I actually had to look and see and make sure I didn't do that. Okay, that's a pretty solid connection. And then
Time for a little heat shrink.
put the heat shrink over it.
Looking good. So there's the new fuel pump setup. Pretty much looks like the factory one, but with a little bit of extra boost to it. So we'll get this back in.
Go in. Pretty much the same as it was before. The O-ring's good. Sometimes it helps to put just a dab of grease on here. Like if the O-ring's like not staying in place, you can put some grease on it just to kind of lubricate it. And then this is a little bit easy since we could see everything right out in the open. But it just basically started like that. So if there's any problems, you'd kind of feel it. You would be kind of like kicked off to the side. Now we'll just hammer this ring back in place. If that ring was deteriorated or anything, we would just replace it while we're here. But as we suspected, somebody had done a fuel pump on this not terribly long ago. And basically I just want that ring to be centered so it's just evenly. So it's at all of the stops. So that's pretty much it. If you're doing this and you are putting the bed back on, I'd recommend powering up the fuel pump, put fuel back in it, power it up before you put the bed on, just to make sure you didn't get like a bad fuel pump or didn't do the wiring right or whatever. Just run 12 volts to the power wire, make sure you have pressure. Of course, do it safely. But it's good to do it now because we're 3 minutes from fixing any problems, versus if we put the bed back on, you're kind of like an hour away from fixing any potential problems. But it's just kind of one of those things, if you're doing all of this work, you might as well kind of verify it. And I'll probably verify it after we get everything back together just to make sure everything's good. We'll have to flush the new fuel lines out too. We still have to modify the bottom for the mounts. So it goes like yay. And I'll have to put the brackets on. Now, as far as being a functional radiator, that's
pretty awesome.
Pretty simple, easy mod. And we're lucky it's pretty close to what the factory truck radiator that came with the truck came with. The advantage is we're going to be able to run the fans, which I'll grab next. These fans are going to keep our engine cool. Pretty much whatever we do to it, these fans are going to be more than adequate for our plans with this truck. I'm really happy with how this came in. I wish I had the engine in here so I could kind of see the dimensions of everything, but I think it's gonna look pretty factory as far as the setup.
It looks good. It looks, you know, it's crazy that these factory mounts and stuff work so well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Like I said, the bottom still needs some help, but it's easy enough to just kind of make it. I did this cutting took what, like 10 minutes to do. Yeah. It didn't hardly take anything. I just took the little air saw and cut off the brackets and set it down in there. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Okay, so that's that. We got a couple things to get. Now let's talk about some fuel stuff.
This is a little bit different. The old engine had a return system, so the fuel pump went into the intake manifold, and then the pressure regulator was in the intake manifold, shot the fuel back. What we're going to do is use the Corvette C5 fuel filter regulator. It has a regulator built in right here on this side of the fuel filter. So fuel's coming in, regulated excess fuel is going to go back to the tank. We're going to reuse kind of the same routing, and then out will be, this will come up to the fuel line on our fuel rail, the inlet. So what we did was we just got the standard fuel fittings. Anybody that's done a fuel, their LS swap, their LT swap, kind of knows the deal with these. These are the factory fuel lines, are quick connects. So you can't just go and put a fuel line on here without some sort of an adapter. And I believe this one is a smaller one. So I like these threaded ones. They have one with a plastic fitting on it. But I like the metal ones because it's a more positive engagement, and there's no chance of it ever backing off when you have the metal fitting on it. So, I mean, it's pretty much locked on there. And, you know, anytime there's fuel involved, you want to do whatever you can to prevent any problems with the fuel system. Whether it's, you know, spending a dollar more on a fuel fitting or, you know, whatever, just to kind of prevent a problem. And then this one will go up to the fuel rail. I don't want it to cut that little O-ring in there, so we'll just put a little bit of grease on it. So, and that's pretty much that assembly.
There you go, converted to AN.
The wrecking yard just pretty much cut this fuel line off here. So we'll have to, this is a quick connect, and you need a tool for this. You could buy these anywhere. This one's from Snap-on actually, but they have smaller ones that are from like AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whoever. It basically depresses the metal tangs in there with the tool, so you could release it. With the direct injected engines, we have to run a fuel pressure sensor on the low pressure side, which is what this is, what the fuel pump is supplying to the engine. This is the high pressure side after the pump. It has its own sensor for the high pressure side, but there's also a low pressure fuel filter, or fuel pressure sensor that we have to do. And I'll probably set it up right here. It can go anywhere. It could go after the filter / regulator, or it could go right here. On the trucks, it's I believe right by the fuel tank, because they pulse with the fuel pump. So it's M16 is the bigger one, and I believe the smaller one's at M14 by 1.5. And so what these do is adapt the factory stuff, which, you know, we haven't touched these. These are just what the truck came with, and this will adapt it to AN. Yep. So that's that one. I think it's pretty obvious the bigger line is a feed, and the smaller 5/16 line is a return. So I'll just tighten these up while we're here. Pretty reliable setup to go back to AN on both of those lines. Now we can lift it up.
Alright, so we got the fuel system pretty much converted for the new AN lines. Now let's get the truck up in the air and get all this old fuel hosing off. I know some of this might seem like it's going along slow, but like we said from the beginning, we want to try and show you guys all this. So if you're doing this at home, you can learn a lot and, you know, pretty much get the build yourself through these videos. So Even the slow parts we're trying to get on film so you guys can see, you know, how to do it all.
This thing unbolts, but watch out, sir. And I missed the fan. And I have a zip tie up here, so I have to move that too.
Well, that was pretty easy.
This was my anti-fuel leak solution the other day. Was that zip tie. So
A little excess fuel.
yeah, I might have to clean that up a little bit. To cut off my. I put this hose on to drain it the other day, and it's still tied up on the top side. It seems like no matter how much you drain, like the fuel tank's completely empty, the lines have been pumped out, they still have a little bit of.
Look at all this excess weight we've gotten off here. Weight reduction.
The fuel line's loose, and if I'm thinking right, we should just pull out. Easy enough. Ew, click on the. You didn't clean this very good, Seth.
No, it was under this bar. I couldn't get to it.
All right.
Man, the back of the cab is looking sweet.
Yeah, it does look pretty nice. Everything looks good. We forgot this.
Oh yeah, that needs to come off. That's extra weight.
All right. So
What is this? Is this extra weight too?
That's just a heat shield. Okay. So we got all the fuel lines off, so we could start putting stuff on. I mean, we did the fuel filter. We got the old fuel lines gone, and we're putting on the new fuel filter. Look, it's like somebody thought we would put a C5 Corvette fuel filter on this truck when it was made. It looks perfect on here.
I just want to start it, Berta. I need to get the engine back in and start it. Do some
Trevor
burnout.
said the oil pan should be here either late this week or early next week.
I'd really like to see a bedless burnout.
I think we should do that.
You
I'm
gotta
on
hurry
board.
though, because the bed can't sit there very long.
I'm on board with the burnout.
Bedless burnout.
Okay. So there's the fuel filter. So we have to connect these two lines to those two lines. And then this line.
Where's it
Do we even see those?
Yeah, you can a little bit.
Oh yeah. So we'll have to connect those two lines to these two lines. And then the outlet, the 60 psi outlet, 58 psi, will go to the engine on direct injection. So pretty simple stuff. We'll just have to make some hoses. I think I'll measure those and get them ready and cut and stuff, and then show how to put them together. And we'll just slap them on one day. That's pretty easy stuff.
Well, I think that's going to about do it for us today. We'll get this few things wrapped up, tightened up, and we'll be back at it tomorrow.